Good morning, everybody. This is Carrie Creech from Waypoint Global. Thank you for joining us. Quite a few of you are already online, so thank you. We're excited that you gave us a little bit of time today. For those of you who sat through our last webinar, we went through our authoring tools and the whole process of transitioning your documentation from an older standard to the new standards that were released in either 2015 or 2016. So in continuation of our webinar series, today we are going to discuss the planning, scheduling, and conducting internal audits. And if you're familiar with the standards, that's something that they want you to be able to do, and it's a good way to hopefully catch any issues that you may have missed in your documentation before your actual auditor comes in for your audits to the new standards. So that's what we're going to cover today. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you would notice to the right, if you see the control panels for GoToWebinar, you'll see an area where you can write your questions, because we do have a large group again today. Everybody is muted so that we don't get a lot of that background noise, but then so you can type your questions as we go, and at the end we will make sure that we address all of them. Hopefully that you all see that area on the right-hand side of your screen. I'm going to turn it over to Megan Anderson and Brad Anderson today. They're going to take us through the webinar. And again, please type your questions as we go. If you're like me, you might forget if you wait till the end. So we'll answer questions at the end. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. And Brad and Megan, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. This is Megan here. Thank you for joining us today, and happy to see some new faces and some returning faces. During the last webinar, we spent the hour discussing about converting your documentation to the new revisions of the international business standards such as ISO 9001, ISO 14001, IATF 16949, etc. Today, we will move forward in our process and act as though we have made the transition ourselves, and now we are ready to perform an internal audit to make sure that we are up to code before we bring in an external auditor. With Audit Manager, today's Spotlight app, you are able to do this with ease. The Waypoint Global Suite solution is comprised of many applications that have all been designed and developed at the request of our customers from around the world. Our focus today, as said already, will be Audit Manager, based upon work we did with the authoring tools and Document Manager that we had done before in the previous webinar. So here is what we'll be covering today. We'll be talking about purpose, the importance of utilizing, why our product is better, and things to keep in mind before you start using a product, and important features of Audit Manager and how to use them. And then we will have a live product demonstration as before, and review, and talking about hot topics, things coming up in the future, and things like that. So why is using an internal audit software important? Well, the standard requires your documents to be reviewed for adequacy and updated as needed, but it's more than that. Your documentation is a reflection of the culture within your company. Are we happy with the status quo, or are we constantly striving to be better than we were yesterday? Keeping your documentation up to date is only one small stone on the path to improvement. Only by frequently looking at what you have done and how you did it can innovation shine through to lead you to better ways of doing things. Keep asking yourself, is this the best way? How can we do better? The next stone on that path would be performing internal audits can help you answer these questions and provide data to show where your weaknesses exist so you can begin working on your plan to improve those areas. Without a plan, improvement will be haphazard at best. Waypoint Global provides integrated products designed to dramatically reduce the time it takes to achieve conformance to a variety of international business standards for quality, environmental, aerospace, medical device, food service, and occupational health and safety management systems. This is accomplished by providing tools that work together to lessen the non-value added time spent on redundant activity and adds on consistency to your documentation. This, combined with using pre-formatted and pre-structured example checklists, many with example questions and guidance notes, gets you started creating reusable audit checklists in a jiffy, because you can begin editing a document instead of starting the creation process from scratch. We encourage our customers to maintain at least 3 checklists for every area audited, so audit participants on both sides don't fall into a rut asking the same questions and getting the same answers audit after audit. Your audit team needs to be read and be very familiar with any processes and instructions within the scope of the audit. Reference documents can be added to each audit to make it easier and take less time for your audit team to find the appropriate documentation. These document relationships will be maintained until you discontinue the relationship. It is a much stronger relationship than a hyperlink had ever hoped to be. Don't forget your housekeeping now. Make sure your files are getting backed up regularly. Many of the standards now require your auditors, and especially your lead auditor, have documented evidence of auditor certification. Completed audits are another management system record, so to take advantage of the results achieved, be sure to index them so you can easily find them when you need to report on the summary and trends for management review. Suite reports can also help with this task. Audit Manager has a flow of sorts that you must follow on the path of in order to reach the next phase of this endeavor. The first stage in this path is creating an audit checklist. Every organization pursuing or maintaining conformance to a business management standard should have multiple audit checklists for everything they audit. This helps generate more usable data because different questions should elicit different responses from the auditees that provide the opportunity to get a different perspective on what truly is happening in your process. Checklists are like a map of the audit. It is only what you plan on auditing and contains questions and guidance notes for your audit team. They are fully editable, and you can add and delete any question or section not part of your original audit plan. No audits are quote-unquote scheduled until a formal date and lead auditor have been assigned. On to the next leg of the journey, which is creating and scheduling an audit. Audits can be built from either original content checklists or from your predefined checklists. Checklists are like the map. It is only what you originally plan on auditing, contains questions and guidance notes from your audit team, and they are only the starting point. They are fully editable, and you can add and delete any question or sections, as anybody who has ever performed an audit knows that audits can sometimes take an entirely different path than what was expected. When this happens, you need the flexibility to change the path so you can document where the audit takes you. And remember, no audits are scheduled until a formal date and the lead auditor have been assigned. Now, time to talk about creating an audit schedule. Every organization pursuing or maintaining conformance to a business management standard needs to have an effective internal audit system. The software was designed to follow the PERC framework for internal auditing, planning the audit, executing the audit, reporting of the audit result, followed by the corrective action on any non-conformances found. The layout of the schedule is a simple one. It is a grid showing months across the top and elements of the standard down on the left side in the standard view. When a process or part audit view is selected, the grid of elements is across the top and the process or parts are listed down and left. To mark the type of audit, either plan or surveillance, a simple right mouse click on the cell corresponding to the desired target will reveal the 2 choices, and selecting the appropriate choice will populate the designated symbol in the cell. This is initially a planning schedule. And remember, no audits are scheduled until a formal date and lead auditor have been assigned. After the audit has been performed by whoever had that role in your organization, you need to harvest the audit output. Every organization pursuing or maintaining conformance to a business management standard needs to show they are performing these internal audits. Just because you're required to perform these tasks doesn't mean you shouldn't try to leverage the data captured during the audit process to further improve your processes. In fact, it is further requirement that your internal audit results be an input into your managed review process so the data gets to see the light of day. You'll have information in a couple of different formats available for your efforts and analysis. A copy of the audit checklist with recorded observations, can't talk today, and findings displayed and in the form of a variety of reports with different objectives. The completed audit results include everything recorded from the audit and provide some visual cues as to how it all came out overall in a format similar to a colored dashboard view. Green indicates the item was found to be in conformance, yellow represents the minor issue, and red as a major finding. So here is a little example for you. The reports for Audit Manager, as well as all of our other modules, have recently been rewritten and are now available in the Suite Reports module. Each report takes advantage of having different selectable parameters that allow the user to further refine their search. This slide shows an example of what an Audit Manager report looks like. There are some things you should give some consideration to before you begin an internal audit. You should make sure your reference documents are updated and make sure it has your audit team been adequately trained, or do they need to catch up on some things before they're ready to take on the task? Have you created at least one checklist for the scope of the audit? And are all participants aware of when the audit will take place? We don't want to surprise them now. So now that we've covered all of the aspects of Audit Manager in a conceptual way, and we've given some tidbits along the way, we'll give a larger scale demonstration by my cohort, Brad Anderson. Would you like to take it over, Maestro?
Yes, please, Megan. If you'll pass the baton.
All right.
Thank you very much, Megan. Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. This is Brad Anderson, and I get the pleasure today of giving you the live demonstration today. So we've explained how it works so far. Now we're going to get to show you here. And we're going to start with the planning. As you've heard multiple times in the presentation so far, no audit is actually scheduled until a date, auditor, and lead auditor are assigned to the audit. So we're going to start by opening up our audit plan here. You can either do this by going to the File menu and try this again here. So we will open up our audit plan. You have a standard selector here at the top for whatever standards you have selected and available in your system. And we're going to go ahead and open up our plan for ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. It's a new combination template pack that is going to be released here very soon. All right, now, as mentioned in the presentation, this is a grid pattern. View. There are different views of this available depending upon the style that you're looking for. You've got a legend across the bottom, and anything that is planned shows as a triangle in a box. And once a auditor, a lead auditor, and a date are assigned, then the audit becomes scheduled, and you can see the difference in the symbolism when the triangle is fully shaded. Over here on the right, we know that our surveillance, our registration audit or surveillance audit, whichever it's going to be, is going to be conducted in October. And so I have some of these already marked. In order to mark an internal audit or a surveillance audit, it's as simple as right mouse clicking on a particular cell. So I'm going to go ahead and complete our audit schedule here for the clause 4 and all of these subclauses here, as we're going to plan on auditing those yet this month.
Brad,
Yes,
could I interrupt just for 1 second, please?
certainly.
Based on some feedback that we received from our last webinar, if your screen, if the picture is very small, there is a control at the top of within the GoToWebinar screen that should say Zoom. And if you click on the down arrow, like mine says Zoom 75%, but if I click on the down arrow, you can choose full screen, actual size, scale to fit. If you choose actual size, at least on my screen, it makes the picture larger and easier to see. So I'm hoping that will help you if the print on, if Brad's screen looks very small to you. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
Well, certainly. Well, we certainly want everybody to see the full screen. It certainly helps. So thanks for that interjection. All right. So as was mentioned in the presentation, you are going to need to show that your entire system is being audited annually. I'm hearing from some customers that some of the registrars that are going through a 3-year cycle are only requiring the entire system to be audited during the cycle. So meaning, from the way I'm interpreting that, they only have to audit their system, their entire system, over a 3-year period instead of an annual. I'm not sure how that works into the continual improvement aspect of internal audits, and I guess it depends on whether you're just trying to have the certificate to show to your customers that you have it, or whether you're trying to actually take advantage of the benefits of implementing a management system, as to how you interpret that. So I've gone ahead and marked all of the rest of Clause 4 for the month of April. I went ahead and marked all of Clause 4 for October as a surveillance audit. If you wish to remove that, it's as simple as right mouse clicking on it again and deselecting it. That just toggles on and off. So a very simple grid pattern here. And you can see, if we scroll down here, we can see how we have managed to plan out all of the entire system to be audited between April, May, June, July, August, and September. So we'll have the entire system completed in time for October. Then I've started over again, and now that I'm going to have a longer period, I've only put 4 in November and part of 5 some of 6, and so on. You can go ahead and create multiple years at a time if you wish. It's entirely up to you. You'll notice that there are 3 tabs here. We can see the scheduled internal audits on the center tab here. So the one audit for 5.2 that was showing as on the actual planning schedule here as being scheduled, that shows up on the scheduled internal audit tabs, because that is the only audit that is currently scheduled. And then on the 3rd tab, we have our title and publishing here. Here is where we can change our title. Whenever you save the audit plan for the first time, you'll be prompted for the name. I think we never use them. After you've put it in there, then you're no longer prompted for it. If you want to change it, it'll bring up the document title window so that you can change it if you wish. It also is going to display the standard and your planning year, and then your printing options. If you want to see the planning schedule, that's what we've seen here. If you want to see it as a monthly view, or if you want to see the department coverage or part or process number coverage or part or number process coverage by month, those are all views that are available. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save our changes here, and I'm going to go ahead and just minimize this. We'll put this in the background here. I'll just go ahead and close it. And then we'll move on to the next part of our process here. Now we're going to start creating a reusable checklist. To keep this webinar brief, I'm going to work on a couple of the smaller areas of requirements, very specific areas, so that you can get the idea of what needs to be done and not spend all day with us. So we're going to focus on this reusable checklist on 8.5.2, identification and traceability, as a department-based audit for the manufacturing and production. And then we'll be creating a process-based audit for staffing. The staffing audit will include questions from 7.1.2 people and 7.2 competence. We're going to start by creating our reusable checklist here by going to File, New, and Checklist. So File, New, and under New you do have the Audit Checklist or Schedule options there. So we're going to say a new checklist, if I can get my mouse to settle on the area here. And we're going to title this checklist. Since this is going to be a reusable checklist, we're going to go ahead and label it as such. So checklist, space dash space, and since this is a department checklist, I'm going to put a D, and then another space dash space, and then what department? Production. And then I'll put the clause in here. And since this is our first checklist, we encourage you to have at least 3 checklists for everything that you're going to be auditing so that you don't fall into that rut of asking the same questions. Then we'll get to choose our standard here. I've got a lot of standards to choose from here. And then this is, as I said, going to be a departmental audit. So here's where you can choose your audit type when you're creating the checklist. Okay, so I'll go ahead and select Next. And then I get to select what element that I wish to audit. I can choose as many as I want. In this case, as I mentioned, just for the obvious benefit of time here, I'm going to choose a single element. And then what department do I want to audit? I can choose any department if I wish. And then when you're using the audit, or the checklist, if you're creating checklists for areas that are going to be auditing things like documented information, corrective action, internal auditing, management review, those things cover a lot of different areas and involve a variety of different areas within your facility. So if you choose any department, then when you get to building the actual audit, you can change those so that it only reflects the area that you wish to audit. So I'm going to choose manufacturing production because this is something that we're going to be only dealing with manufacturing production. And then I'll click the Finish to complete the setup of the checklist. Now this is using all of the questions from the original content that is included as part of the template pack. So immediately our checklist is presented to us so that now we're ready to customize any of the questions in the guidance notes. We expect that you will want to edit every question and guidance note provided, and probably even add some more to make it specific to your organization, which will make it more relatable to your employees who are going to make up your audit team, as well as to your auditees who are going to have to be answering those questions. The first tab in the workspace displays all of the indexing that's automatically assigned based on the information provided during the checklist creation. We aren't going to make any changes at this time. The second tab is for reference documents. The reference documents tab automatically is populated based up on the indexing that's been assigned based on the information that's provided during the creation of the checklist. So it's automatically determined that there is an audit or a procedure here that is indexed to 8.5.2. So it's populated there. If you want to have access to all of the documents that are in your system, you can click the More button there and you'll have complete access to all of the documents in your system. So you can see there's 1,763 documents here to choose from. So I'm just going to add this product identification, traceability, and status procedure to my checklist. And if we want to view that from here, I can even view that from here, so that when your auditors are building their audits, then they can view the reference documents from right here, so that they can become familiar with the reference documents associated to the audit. It's a pretty handy feature. So now we're ready to edit our checklist questions and guidance notes. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight question number 1. By default, the checklist says, how does the organization demonstrate, where appropriate, the identification of the product by suitable means throughout the product realization? And this takes us back to the first shall statement at 8.5.2. In order to edit this, all I have to do is select the edit button, and it opens up what's now a text box in order to edit this content here. And I'm going to change this question based on some information that I've already created. So we're going to change the question to now read, please describe how our parts are uniquely identified throughout the production process. There's also a spell check available. So now we have edited our question. We can also edit the guidelines or guidance notes that go along with it. The guidelines are intended to be a help to your audit team. Nobody can afford full-time auditors, so in just about every case, you're going to be having to have people that are typically not familiar with necessarily an audit, and having some pre-written notes would certainly be a help. So I have prepared some additional information here. So I have put down here who to ask, what's going to be the input, what's going to be the output, are there any records to be aware of, and number of samples that you want to take a look at, and then an explanation about what it is that we're really looking for. So each part gets stamped with a part number and a unique traceability code. As one of the first processes when creating a part, this should be visually apparent on every part. So I'll say OK, and so now you can see our first question and guidance have been edited. We'll go and work on a second one here. So this one is going to be edited to reflect a question that is more appropriate to our content here. If you want to leave the reference in, you certainly can do that and not highlight the entire text. We'll edit our guidance note. And copy pasting from a Word document. Okay, so now we have updated that question, and we have a third question here. I'm not going to make any changes to this question, but I do have some changes to the guideline. So you don't have to edit everything if you don't want to. So this time we do have a record to look at, and we have changed the number of samples to look at. This even references a particular step in the reference procedure. And as was mentioned during the presentation, you can edit anything in here. So if I do a right mouse click, I can delete questions, I can insert questions, I can add questions. Adding questions always adds at the bottom of the list. Inserting will insert in front of where you are wanting, where your highlight is right now. Okay, so if I wanted to insert another question here, I'm going to highlight the third question here. I'm going to select Insert, and that's going to bring me a dialog here so that now I can bring in this information for this next question. And in this question is going to be, how can I tell if traceability is even required for a part? Because traceability, when required, has to be identified. So there is my question, spell check. Now, how do I edit? And notice how it inserted it as question 3. So what was number 3 is now down at number 4. I'll bring up my window here, and I can copy paste into my question the guidance note here. And so now I have a 4-question checklist. Okay, our procedure states in step 9 that traceability requirements are determined during the contract review process, and that the requirement is displayed on the work order. We mark all of our parts with a unique identification and then record it for positive recall purposes. But if it is a contractual requirement, we want to check to ensure that the information is being recorded in the production log. So that's part of the requirements here. And we want to observe the operator or technician for at least 15 minutes and make sure it's being recorded, and observe at least 3 different employees in the same manner. So we've completed our editing of the checklist. So now we're going to save our changes and then close the document. That will automatically check it in. So that's all there is to creating a reusable checklist. And if you want to see where that went, so now if we go to Open Checklist, now we can see that that checklist that we just created is highlighted there. I already created a couple of others here. Because I mentioned, we encourage you to have at least 3 of everything that you're going to be auditing, and just record which checklist you use so that you'll know to use a different one on your next audit. That can easily be recorded in the audit notes. Okay, so next we're going to move on to creating and scheduling an audit by creating a process audit. When you're creating an audit, you can either go to File, New, or you can click on the first icon, which creates a new audit. And it's a wizard to help walk you through the process, just like everything else that we have here. All right, so our audit title. Okay, so I'll make this 2018 Process Audit Staffing 01. And for our audit number, an audit number is also required. So we'll make that 2018. And since this is a process audit, we'll make that a P. Say staffing 01. So we may do more audits of staffing this particular year. What's going to be our audit description? Say an internal audit of our staffing process. And the purpose and scope. Okay, we will be auditing and ... I think you get the idea what you're supposed to define your purpose and scope for the audit. Next, do we want to use original content questions? You're free to use the original content questions. There's at least 1 question for every shall statement in the requirements. In many cases, there's multiple questions because they really infer more than what 1 question could possibly cover. Or you can use your checklist if you have them created. So I'm going to choose my staffing 1 and then select Next. Now we're ready to schedule. So when do we want this audit to take place? You can't just type the information in. You need to select your dates. I'll go ahead and leave them as today's date so that you can see the notification process. So who is going to be on the audit team? In the top window here, in the center portion of the screen, this is the list of auditors. The bottom window is listed for the people that are going to be audited, the auditees. So if we're going to add to our audit team right now, I'm going to go ahead and select some auditees here, or auditors. I'll choose Mark Whitcomb, and Gerald Benware is our management rep and audit program manager, so he is going to be our lead auditor. With him selected, I'm going to go ahead and assign him to be the lead auditor by selecting the lead auditor button. If there are auditees that you want to notify, you can add them as well. We can see human resources is Janet. So I'll go ahead and select Janet. So now Janet will also receive a notification when we have completed this audit creation here. So since this check mark is in the notify after finishing the wizard, when we finish the wizard, we'll get an indicator that the notifications have been sent. So I'll go on to next, and then we'll finish. And this is going to create our audit. Shows notifications have been sent. And here is our audit. Now, since we used a reusable checklist from which to build the audit, you may not have any editing that needs to be done at this point, unless you want to change or add some questions perhaps from another checklist. You can copy paste from other checklists as well. You can have as many windows and audits open as you want at a time, and there's no harm in that. So that you can copy paste questions from other audits, you're free to do that. Okay, now since we chose human resources as the department when we were building the checklist, if we would have chosen any department, if I do a right mouse click here, I could say change department and then reselect if I want to ask those questions from others. And when I built this particular audit or checklist, there are some questions that we're going to be asking human resources. There's going to be other things that we're going to be asking personnel in the manufacturing production area. So you can have as many different areas of your organization involved in auditing any particular element. All right, so on the audit information, you'll notice that there are 5 tabs in our workspace here. Here is the name of our audit, our title. Here's the audit number. We can see the different printing options that are available. And these printing options will determine what you see when you view the audit form. Right now, if we look at with the completed audit and I view the audit form, we can see what the results would look like. Since we haven't actually answered any of the questions, the status for every question is incomplete, and there's no observations that are listed. If we choose the blank checklist, then we get 2 questions per page and a nice empty white space here. We have a lot of customers that print these out, and then we'll take them out into the actual audit floor, shop floor, around the organization, and they'll handwrite in their notes of what they found. We go back and choose the blank checklist form with guidelines. Then you'll still get your 2, you'll get your question and your guidelines as well. So you know what you're supposed to be looking for, who you should ask, what type of input and output are there. So all of that information is available so that it can be printed out if you want. If you'd rather take the information with you, feel free to put it on a laptop. You can also, if you have a Windows-based tablet, you could also use a tablet for your internal audit. It does need to be using a Windows OS in order for it to use our particular program. The second tab in the audit workspace is the indexing. This carried over from the checklist. It's showing all of the departments. If there's any part or process involved, it shows that as well. And it's linked to all of the elements that are involved. The reference documents carries over the information from the checklist, and you have more available if you need it. The evidence card tab is used during and after the audit. This is where auditors can attach any evidence found during the audit. It must be registered into the system in order to be attached. So we encourage you to set up a registration template in QuickReg Template Admin for batch registering audit evidence and assigning your audit team access to use the template in QuickReg. I've even set up an audit evidence number list and number dispenser so that each piece of evidence automatically gets assigned a unique number for traceability. The car part of the tab, which is the bottom half of the tab, is automatically populated with any findings that were documented during the audit and are created when the audit is completed. Not closed, but completed, meaning it is no longer editable. And lastly, as I've already shown you on the View Audit Form tab, that displays the audit contents depending upon the selection of the print options listed and selected on the first tab. So now that we've scheduled this audit, let's check out our schedule here and see if anything has changed for 8.2. We can see we have something scheduled here for, oh, this was for staffing. We didn't do the 8.2, that was the checklist. Here is our support, resources, people, and competence. Those are all the items that are listed, have now been shown to be scheduled for the month of April. So the schedule will continue to get updated based upon the activities that you utilize within Audit Manager. All right, let's go ahead and pretend as if we're conducting the audit here. All right, so here's our first question. You'll notice that there are two tabs in the work area here for each question. There's a question and guideline, just as we had in the check when we were building our checklist. And notice it's still fully editable if you want to edit the question. If you want to change the question as you're going through the audit, you certainly can do that. You can change it on the fly. You can right mouse click and insert, add, delete questions on the fly. You have total flexibility to customize your audit how you need to. And I think that's essential in a functional audit environment here. The second tab is where we can select the question status, enter any findings or observation. By default, every question is going to be marked as incomplete until you work on it. It'll stay incomplete unless you mark a status differently. Notice at this point, with it being incomplete, you can't add any findings or observations until you change a status. Okay. In this first question, we're going to say that this one conforms. Notice how the document or the question turns green. And now I cannot enter a finding because it wasn't a non-conformance, but I can enter an observation. So if I select add, it opens up a text box here. And I have a prepared observation here. Explaining what we found during the audit to support our conforms finding or observation here. our status of conforms. If you wish to add a second one, you're welcome to do so. You can have as many as you want, and they will show up as separate observations in the completed audit. We'll go ahead and leave that as our first one here. So we'll move on to our next question. As I mentioned, our first question, the document in front of it turned green because we selected conforms. There are other colors for nonconformances, yellow for minor issues and red for major. And according to my notes, it looks like for our second question, describe the organization's process to determine necessary personnel with the skills necessary for effective implementation and for the operation and control of its processes. That's a pretty hefty question here, so we've got some good guidance notes down here on our findings and observations. We're going to go ahead and mark this as a major nonconformance. By doing so, that's going to turn the document in front of it red, and notice now we can enter a finding as well as observations. So I'll select add here. I'll copy my finding that we wrote up during the audit. So now I have my finding in place. If I wanted to add additional, I can have as many as I need to. Hopefully you won't. Okay. All right, so we'll move along. Describe how the process of identifying training needs for each position works. And this one, we'll say it conforms. I'll paste in my observation. Okay, my mouse has stopped working. There we go. So this one's in conformance. This question, we'll say is in conformance. I'll paste in my observations. Okay, so for question 4, we're also in conformance here. No findings, but I will enter an observation. For question 5, we're going to say that during our audit, we found what we consider a minor. So for my status and findings, I'm going to select a minor, and you'll see how that turns green. And in the finding, we'll paste what it is our finding documented back to the requirement at 7.21A1, 9001-2015 requirement. Okay, so I think you get the idea of how the information is entered here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the rest of these as conformed. And not enter any observations just for the sake of some time here. I'll go ahead and save my changes here. And now we have entered information for every question. All right. If we go back to our audit information, here's where we put in our purpose and scope when we were creating the audit. And we also have audit notes that are available as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put in some audit notes here. And then once I am ready to make sure that we have no further edits to make, then you want to be really sure on this because there's no going back. We can complete the audit. When I complete the audit, it is going to make this non-editable. There's no going back. Are you sure that you want to complete this audit? Yes. And you can see how it's starting to generate the non-conformances right now. And there were a total of 2. And notice how it has now turned everything gray and I can no longer edit anything. All of the edit buttons have been deactivated. All of the observation and findings area have been deactivated, so nothing is editable at this point. So you want to make sure before you complete an audit that there's nothing else that you want to change on that audit. On the evidence card tab, now here are the non-conformances that were identified, and if you want to view those from right here, certainly can. So here's the description of the non-conformance, which takes the information directly from the finding, puts it in place. We've populated as much information as we possibly can in the form so that it's ready to go to the gatekeeper to be assigned. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is part of the subject of next month's webinar, working on non-conformances. If I go back to the audit information here, to the audit information, notice that you cannot close the audit. It'll ask you, oh, sorry, there's 2 corrective actions that are still open. It cannot be closed at this time. So it's a true closed loop system. Okay? I think we've shown how the audit tool works pretty well. So we'll go through, we'll save that audit again, and then I will close that audit. And I'll even close out of Audit Manager. There's notifications, we had action items. Here's our, we're logged in right now as the manager representative. So if we want to see the action items, here's our internal audit. And so here is how we wanted to let the management rep know that the department was scheduled for an internal audit. And if we want to delete that, we can delete that from right here. That'll get rid of that action item. Okay. All right. We talked earlier about how to set up a template in Template Admin for registering audit evidence. So I just wanted to show you an example of one that I had set up here. So I have set up a template for creating audit evidence and creating a name using the document, the file name as the document title, less the extension. In this case, we're using number dispenser to draw the next available number from the audit evidence number list. We can see the details, who's going to be the owner, the repository, who's going to be the final approval authority for it, what's going to be the document type, all of the typical information here that you would set up in a template, assigning access, indexing. If you have questions about how to set this up, please let us know in support, and we'll be happy to walk you through the process. It is just another example of how template admin can make a much easier task of repetitive type tasks. And when you're ready to actually use the template, if I click on Quick Edge here, minimize this. Quick Edge should be running here somewhere. Okay, is it? Oh, there it is. It went away. So here is Quick Edge. If I want to add, I can click on Add. It'll either bring up the documents that you can browse to, or if you've got a couple of documents here, like I've got a couple here, I'll go ahead and just highlight both of them and drag them into the window. I choose the registration template that I want to use. And since these are ones that I went ahead and tested these and neglected to delete them yesterday. Okay, so now since I have made the titles unique, we're ready to register those. I'll go ahead and click on the Go button and click on Register and register the second one. And now they're both registered. So we'll go back to desktop here. I look in recently released, and there are my audit evidence documents. The ones that I added one are the ones that are right there. And you can see how they're drawing the next number from the number dispenser list. Okay. Last thing that we wanted to show you here, suite reports. There are quite a few reports. There's nearly a dozen reports, I think Megan mentioned in the presentation, in the Suite Reports app. So you just highlight Audit Manager, and then we go to Completed Internal Audit Status Report by Lead Auditor. You choose your standard. You can only choose one standard at a time. And there is the results from the audit that we just completed. One minor, one major, and here's the audit notes that we entered. We want to see a car summary report. So again, we'll choose the standard. Hit submit. And this lists them for all audits. You'll notice that you're not selecting an audit. So we have some that were conducted. Here's the information about since we've only completed one audit for this standard. So here is the information about the individual audit when it was conducted, and then here are the two non-conformances that were documented as a result of the audit and are now ready to be addressed in corrective action. There's a lot of other reports available. We've tried to be responsive to customer requests. You can see internal audit non-conformances by department, by element, by part or process. Audit history by product, part, element, department. You can see scheduled internal audits. There's just a variety of reports that are available. If you can think of other reports that you think would be beneficial, let us know. We'll be happy to take a look at those. All right. So, in review, I think we've pretty well covered why you are going to need to perform your internal auditing, if not just because it's the right thing to do in order to help your organization improve. All of the business management standards require some level of internal auditing. And this is just going to make it easier for you. As far as some common questions that come in about Audit Manager, does Audit Manager support a part or process audit? Absolutely. And it's an option that's selected when building a checklist for an audit. Are there reports available to help prepare for management review? Yes, there are several reports to help you prepare for that process. Can I edit the provided checklist questions and guidance notes? I think we've shown that you certainly can support your ability to do that, and we encourage you to make it more specific to your organization. When you think about the wide breadth of customers that we have, covering just about every industry, the questions we write at a pretty high level so that they really will apply to everybody. So please make it more specific to your organizations, please. It'll help you get the most out of performing internal audits. And another question that we occasionally get is, how many auditors should we have trained? And that's an excellent question. According to ASQ, they recommend that you have at least 20% of your workforce as trained auditors, because it's their feeling that the more different eyes you have on your organization, the more things that will be seen that will lead to improvement. It also helps with the buy-in of the vision of the management system. And when people see how what they do impacts other people that they work with, whether they like them or not, or whether they get along, it really doesn't matter. When they see how what they do in their particular position and how their output impacts other people, they'll have a tendency to start trying to do better work. And so you actually reap some benefits by having more people trained as auditors than just by having a select few that have been tasked with the job. And people will become a lot more familiar with the standard as well and know why they are being asked to do things in a certain way. So you spend less time explaining why things have to be done this way if people know that you're doing it this way because it is a requirement. So any other questions? Carrie, have you been watching theCUBE?
I have been. Could you, excuse me, sorry, maybe talk a little bit about what is the difference between an audit plan and an audit schedule?
Okay. In the audit schedule, you may recall that the actual planned audits are a unshaded triangle in the grid. Once an audit has an audit team assigned to it, a lead auditor, and a date associated to the audit, it becomes scheduled. So it's like, okay, well, we're planning on auditing all of clause 6 in the month of June, but we haven't assigned a date to any of these audits. We haven't assigned any members of an audit team or a lead auditor to anything about that. It's just an idea that we have where we're going to try to get that done. When the actual dates are assigned and the audit team is assigned, that's when it becomes an actual scheduled audit.
Perfect, got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the other questions that we received was about recordings or a copy of the presentation to share with colleagues. Absolutely. We make it a point to record all of our webinars. A couple of times we've had to re-record due to some audio tech difficulties, but we certainly do record them, and then we will email links out to everybody that attended, or even if you were unable to attend but you were registered. With that said, I would recommend in the future, if you ever get an email invite to one of our webinars and it's one that you're unable to attend, go ahead and register, because that for sure will make sure that you get a copy of the of the recording so that you can view it at a later date. And we're happy to do that for you. Or you can also just email me. I had a couple of people do that. I think it's spring break time around the country. I had a couple of customers just email me last week and ask if they could get a recording after the fact. So that way works too. It was a kind of a quiet group this morning, that's okay too. We're just happy that you gave us a little bit of time. A couple of things, reminders that I'd like to provide to you when it comes to Audit Manager and corrective action. Actually, as Brad kind of alluded to, we're doing webinar series. So next month, you'll be getting an invite for additional webinars in the future, and our next one is going to be dealing with nonconformances. So we're just kind of staying in that kind of how does everyday life work. And obviously, once you do an internal audit, typically, not always, we hope you don't find any nonconformances, minor or major, but if you do, what do I do now? And how Waypoint applications can help you deal with those things when you find them in an audit. So be on the lookout for our next webinar in May. Reminder, certainly, as Brad has put up on the screen, is that we have created, oh my gosh, just a ton of how do I videos, how do I schedule an audit, how do, those types of things. So if you need reminders, even in the future, if you have a login and a password to our website, you can go to our website and find these videos. If you are unsure if you have access to our website, please contact technical support or myself. We will be happy to confirm or deny that you have access, and if you don't, we'll make sure that we get you set up so that you can have access to that. Every user that uses our system should have access to the videos because it's a great way to just do a quick refresher on the fly. I think the longest video is maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. I take that back. Indexing is a little bit longer of a topic, but most of them are really quick, 1, 2, 3 minutes that you can watch very quickly while you're in the middle of a process and then get right back to work. The next thing is that we are conducting an Audit Manager Corrective Action class here in our headquarters in Indianapolis, May 8th and 9th. If this is something that you're interested in, please let myself know, Brad, Megan, any of us, we can get you information about the details around that class, and hopefully you'll be able to join us. Hopefully there will be no snow in Indianapolis in May, but I can't promise that because it is Indiana, and right now there's snow flurries. So, but hopefully it'll be a great time, great weather, and you can make it to Indianapolis. Once again, there's more webinars coming coming soon, and also we have a pretty big release, 4.0, that's going to be coming this summer. So we're very excited about that. It is a release that touches pretty much every application within the system. One last note, we showed a little bit about template admin and quick reg along with suite reports. These are this is functionality that is in the core system, no matter if you have our Audit Manager module or not. So if that's something that intrigued you or just caught your attention and you're not familiar with it, again, please contact us. That's what we're here for. Technical support, myself, we're here to answer any questions. If you've run into something that you're just not sure about, give us a call. We'd love to help you out. On the screen there are the many different ways to get a hold of us, and we'd love to help you out. We're here to serve you. So thank you again, everyone, for your time. Please look for an email in the next day or two, end of the week at the very latest, that will have links to the webinar that please feel welcome to share with your colleagues. And if there's additional questions that come up after the fact that we didn't answer today or you think of later, just reach out to us and let us know. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.